What if I told you that South Africa's most dangerous cartel, known as the Farm or the Firm or the Big Five, has not been hiding in the shadows? That people who are working and belong to this cartel, that they have probably passed us in the street. They wear police uniforms, government badges. They ride around in vehicles that belong to private security companies, and they are working inside of our ports and inside of our airports, running contract killings, substances, extortion rings, hijackings, kidnapping rings, tender fraud, and influencing prosecutions and magistrates. And this has all come out of the Madlanga Commission, and today we are going to be talking about the firm exposed. So first of all, we have to talk about the ex-CEO. So the ex-CEO has come out in the Madlanga Commission as being a man by the name of Jonathan Msibi, otherwise known as King Mswazi. To some, he was a businessman, a transport mogul, a peace negotiator in the taxi industry, but to other people, he was someone more powerful. He was named as the president of the Big Five cartel on a Sunday morning in a Pretoria hospital. He died after a month-long illness, an undisclosed illness. And the main thing about this is this man did not have a violent death. He went away due to an illness, which I want you to remember. His funeral looked more like a farewell and more like a declaration of dominance, because taxi members and politicians flew in on helicopters, allegedly from all over the country, to his farm in Hammanskraal, where they said their goodbyes and they paid their respects. And the presence of all those people there makes me think about one thing. How deep did Mswazi's influence go? Now, this is where the story turns more explosive, because former spy boss Arthur Fraser, the same man who exposed the Phala scandal, said Mswazi was hired to kill him. So the Phala scandal, if you don't know, is what controversy that surrounded President Cyril Ramaphosa and almost cost him his presidency. So this businessman, this very rich foreign businessman, rocked up at Cyril's Phala ranch or farm, and he spoke to the farm manager and said, this is the story they want us to believe, that I want to buy some buffalo. So they went and they looked at the buffalo, and he picked 18 buffalo, and he went into his car where his driver was waiting, and he came back with US dollars, basically a bag of money, and paid 800,000 Rand in US dollars. Well, this is the story that they want us to believe. And instead of taking that money and putting it in a safe or putting it in a bank, and you will say to me, Carri, it was over December, banks are closed. Well, that money was in the couch until February. It was instead stuffed inside a couch in Cyril's daughter's bedroom. And guess what? It stayed that way until February, where allegedly one of the domestic workers who worked there found it and then allegedly stole it along with two other of her accomplices. And she is innocent until proven guilty, but this is still playing out in the system. And it's interesting because Cyril Ramaphosa was never charged over having these undisclosed dollars that he didn't put in the bank, that he didn't pay tax on, and the buffalo were never, delivered. So why was that money for? I don't know. You can make up your own minds below. This scandal was exposed by former crime boss Arthur Fraser. And he said Mswazi was hired to kill him. And he says that he was hired to assassinate him and both him and his lawyer. So he wasn't going to take out just Arthur Fraser. He was going to take out his lawyer as well. And the motive was because Fraser's criminal case that he opened against Cyril Ramaphosa. But here is the twist, is that the hit was allegedly called off when Fraser traveled to Nkandla and told former President Jacob Zuma about this. And then according to Fraser, Zuma instructed Mswazi to leave them alone. Yeah. Mswazi's name has long hovered around violence. There was a scandal that he was associated with around 26 years ago in the 2000s when two hitmen went to the police and they said that they were hired by his wife and her sister to kill him. But the sisters were arrested. What happens to the case remains unclear. He has some political associates. He was apparently the older brother of Mandla Msibi, who returned as ANC's Mpumalanga treasurer earlier this year after some controversy. And when asked about the Big Five allegations, this family spokesperson has responded saying the family will let him rest. So that is no denial, no clarifications, just silence. And the man is dead now. We will never get answers out of him. The only thing I've got to say on this matter is that when he died in January 2024, he died after an illness in hospital for a month. I wonder if he made preparations, if preparations were made for the successor, for a new CEO, because I went through the news and I couldn't find any strange assassinations or any violent killings that happened around that time, because usually when there is a power vacuum, then people will fight for a position of power, or they will jockey for a position of power in order to take that role. So that makes me think that perhaps someone was appointed to be the next CEO or the next leader after his death. So he was the CEO, and below him was a full and extensive structure. Ministers of crimes, heads of departments, if you will, linked to substances, kidnappings, tender fraud, extortion, murder, and cross-border vehicle smuggling. But the part that shocked the Commission and the people of South Africa the most was perhaps that the hitmen are not the problem. According to witnesses, there are specific handlers in the cartel. And we learned that when allegations came forward that Cat Matlala, that he wanted to put a hit out on his ex-girlfriend, and he went to the hitman, and the hitman said, you have to go and check with our handlers first, and you have to get permission from the handlers in order to do the hit. And also there are certain levels of hits. So high-profile hitmen, they won't just take anyone out. This person has to be someone sort of authority or influence. Otherwise, they pass it down to someone who is lower on the tier or under them. And these are whole departments that are organized like this, which makes it essentially so scary. There is a full organization that is being run like a Fortune 500 company. You think that the informal economy in South Africa is worth billions. I'm telling you, this is worth billions and is probably one of the biggest employers in South Africa. Now, let's get according to some testimony. So General Khumalo described the cartel as a countrywide employer. And you got benefits, you got regular salaries, and you got business fronts. And you had retired members who got retirement packages and still brokered deals. And most importantly, strategic placement inside the South African police service and the justice system was important. So if you have been following me along on my channel, you will know that there are certain positions that make certain people more valuable to the Big Five or the firm or the farm, whatever you want to call it. So for example, the public prosecutions, provincial prosecutors. These are the people who have say at the end of the day whether something can be prosecuted or not. And every province has one. And there are 9 of them. And for example, I would think that these positions in places where the cartels operate, which is in Gauteng as well as the coastlines, would be of important positions where the cartels would want to target. Another thing we've got to talk about is that people who are in entry-level positions are also almost recruited immediately. So, for example, as you come into the police, as you come into government, because they bought the one thing that the cartel needed, which was, for example, a direct line to investigations, prosecutions, and leaks. And as these people moved up in their official careers, in for perhaps the government or in the SAPS, then they also moved up in their careers in the cartel. So what happens is essentially, as you are moving up in your career in the police and you are getting more information, you're getting a higher up role, then in the cartels as well, you can leak more information, you can build your way up. And people inside the cartel were feeding so people inside the system have essentially been feeding the cartel information. Witness C went to go and look for Jerry at Cat's house. Jerry was gone because of a tip-off. Because these people, some of them have probably been captured for a very long time. Now, we know that the head of the firm is in Gauteng. It makes sense. Gauteng is the financial capital of South Africa. Everyone knows that the only reason that you move to Gauteng, it's not because of the weather. And I'm from Gauteng. I was born there, so I can say that. Or not because of the people and not because of the city itself, but because of the money. It is a place where you go to make money and make money quickly. It is a place that never sleeps. It is a place that runs on money. And why should the cartel or the firm be any different? So the headquarters of the cartel are said by General Khumalo to be in Gauteng, but there are important provinces that we are going to talk about now that fuel the cartel's oxygen. So, for example, one of the cartel's main sources of income is substances. Remember Jerry Cat, when he was speaking to Witness C after he had been arrested and he was spilling all the tea, he said that he had loaned Jerry 5 million rand in order to buy a substance machine to convert substances more efficiently. And we know that substances, how they come into the country is that most of them are not made here, they are imported. So this is an import business. And they come through coastlines, so shipping industry especially. Now, in your mind, where are the 3 areas that are known in South Africa for shipping? So that would be KwaZulu-Natal, it would be Eastern Cape, and it would be the Western Cape. So these 3 provinces are integral for the cartel's operation. So, for example, the firm has its main base in Gauteng, but it has its perhaps other offices, I would say, in KZN, Eastern Cape, and the Western Cape. And you'll probably find, like with all leadership structures, that there is someone who is in charge of the operations on all of these places, specifically Durban Harbour. Perhaps there's someone, as well as Cape Town Port. Now, I would say that another province that there is probably an office or where someone is routing, I would say, is Limpopo. Limpopo for me also seems like a credible place where they would position someone, because that is essentially, Limpopo borders 3 other African countries where there is a lot of cars that are smuggled across the border. So Limpopo borders Mozambique, it borders Zimbabwe, and it borders Botswana. And we know that cars are smuggled in to all of these countries through syndicate operations. So I would put a guess, even though this has not come out in the news, that Limpopo is probably also a place of interest for the Big 5. Now, the main source of income of the firm is substances. You know what the word is, but I have to say it for YouTube. And this is where it gets dark, because essentially these people are becoming rich on other people's illness, other people's addictions, other people's despair. And the substances are the main form of income. But when the substances are delayed, when there are shipments that are delayed, then there are hiccups in the main business. Then they have like business recovery plans, which we're going to talk about, which are known as quick cash flow exercises. And these include cash enhancer trysts, ATM bombings, high-level tender fraud, cross-border hijackings. Remember, Limpopo, important province to keep in mind, kidnappings, and extortion. All to keep the machine running and all to make sure that you get that flow of cash. Now, when new members join the cartel, the first step is bizarrely very simple, which is register a private security company. So someone who has been named in the cartel is Cat Matlala. We know that testimony came out this week at Madlanga that he was working with the bad Julius Mkonasi, I call him the bad Mkonasi, in order with his security company Cat VIP, and that's how he got those blue lights installed on his vehicles to take Mama Cat and her cubs to the airport and even go on the tarmac. And this is important for a security company to be registered for a number of reasons, because it gives access to firearms. It seems as though you are being legit. So you're sort of also taking out your competition in a way. It's actually an ingenious plan, because you are taking out your competition, your fellow criminals, you are taking them out, and you are enhancing your own agenda further. You are looking legit. And most importantly, it gives you a clean commercial front in order to move both money and goods. And like I said, the commission heard the two names that appeared over and over, and these are the two that have been named in the Madlanga for allegedly being members of the Big Five. So like I said, we have the CEO. There is probably, who we don't know who that is, there is a CFO who probably runs the finances, and then there is with the Big Five, which I think are the board members. And there have been two that have been identified in Parliament in the Madlanga Commission, and that is Katie Molefe, who is currently out on bail, and Vusi The Cat Matlala, who is didn't get his bail. He's currently still behind bars. And these people are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And according to testimony that happened in Parliament, Katie Molefe was responsible mainly for substances, tender fraud, and contract killings. Now, if we had to trace the web of Katie Molefe, then that leads us back to Armand Swart. And I actually received a message from one of the family members of Armand Swart today saying thank you for me continue to speak out about him, because what happened to Armand Swart was simply terrible. It was a case of mistaken identity. We know that Katie sent Michael Tao, who was the policeman, the whistleblower's name and number, who was working at this company called Q-Tech. And this company, Q-Tech, someone blew the whistle on Spring's purchase that was being sold to Katie's group, SK Holdings. And the Spring purchase which was supposed to be 25,000 Rand, was being sold onto Transnet for a couple of million, 1.6 million or something. And that is taxpayer money. That is your money. That is my money that was being swallowed up in that process that Transnet was overpaying for. So this is a crime that affects all of us, because it is essentially our money that is being stolen from us. And we should be more angry about this than what we are. And essentially, when that whistleblower blew the whistle on that, then Lucky Molefe, who was Katie Molefe's nephew, who is still on the run, he was working at Transnet, and all of his tenders were going to be reviewed, and he was going to get into a lot of trouble. And that's why they needed to take that whistleblower out very quickly. The way that they recruit ex-policemen has also been explained, I suppose, because Michael Tao, who is the accused hitman, he is a captain. He was a detective at Johannesburg Central, and he essentially was, Michael Tao was essentially the perfect recruit, because if you think about it, it's wise to recruit among policemen as hitmen, because they already know how to shoot. They already know how to use assault rifles and automatic weapons. I mean, you don't have to train them. You don't have to spend any money training them. It makes economical sense to hire, I would say, policemen, ex-members of the private security forces, as well as South Africa Defence Force members. I would say this is probably what makes up the bulk of the hitmen in the cartel. And that we know that Katie Molefe was, according to General Kamalu, so he was in charge of substances, tender fraud, and contract killings. And then we go to Vusi The Cat Matlala. He was also involved in substances. Remember his friend Jerry. So Jerry Bashoga is that businessman who has been missing. He was kidnapped very professionally in August of last year. So he has essentially been missing for more than a year now. And he went to go for a business meeting at a KFC, and the people who kidnapped him were so efficient that they didn't even get their faces shown on KFC cameras, because they investigated immediately when Jerry was taken. And next thing you know, they didn't show their face or their vehicle once. That's how good these people are. And we know that Katz was accused of being involved in kidnapping, and that's probably why Witness C went looking for Jerry at Kat's house. And remember, when Witness C pitched up at Kat's house, he went into that one room. And this is a palace. I mean, like I said in a previous video, this was bought with our money. We should all move into that house. Every other room had curtains on the curtain rods, and that room had that white sheet that is very similar to what was being shown in ransom videos that were being shown and sent to Jerry's family in order to get more money out of them. And I don't know what happened to Jerry, but if Jerry was involved in all of this, I do not know. I do not like to make allegations or anything like that. But something more happened there with Jerry that I think is going to resurface probably sooner than we think. And then we also know that the cat was also allegedly involved in extortion. Now, we know that Witness B even explained that before a hit was carried out, the hitman had to get permission. And like I said, you have to go to the handler and get permission from the handler. And then you got to pay. You got to sort of pay down a down payment. And then when your payment gets accepted, then you pay the full amount. I mean, this is very sophisticated way in which to do things. A lot of these payments, if we think about the process of payments, Sabir is the only one who is really accepting cash, according to what Kat said when he was speaking to Witness C. Remember about how he dropped 2 million rand in a police dustbin for Sabir to buy a guest house in Joburg somewhere. Well, Sabir is the only one who seemed smart enough to be taking cash because it's not really that easily traceable. While the rest of them, they were putting it through their daughter's accounts and their wife's accounts and their mother's accounts, whatever. They were transferring the money through there. And that just makes me think that there is some sort of ego behind all of this. Who do these people know that is so high up that they thought that their accounts would never be looked at? Because this almost seems like an amateur mistake, unless you were really sure that you were going to be protected. And also, we know that these hitmen, they are protected when they do sometimes get caught by good police officers. There is that envelope system, as I call it, that is employed, where there is one envelope for the IO, one envelope for the prosecutor, and one envelope for the magistrate. And the envelope system seems to have been quite a highly effective system. We know that, for example, certain people get bail when other people don't get bail. There is mysterious circumstances surrounding all of this. This is why Witness B emphasized that when you are prosecuting the hitman, it's not really doing anything. It's not enough. You have to take down the people who are at the top, who are ordering the hits. Another thing that I wanted to speak about is that people who have dual citizenships are also targeted by the cartels because of their free access into other countries. I would think perhaps neighboring African countries, for example, specifically for things such as substances and cars. We got to think about perhaps dual citizenship of people from Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana. These people are recruited into the cartels just because of their citizenship and their ability to position them. Now, what scares investigators, why everyone is so terrified of the people running the firm, is because this cartel, it isn't just a gang. It is a system with loyalty, hierarchy, income, and inside access to justice. And as the commission goes on, I'm going to say that the Madlanga Commission is shaking a tree. And instead of fruit, there are kidnappings, alleged kidnappings, and bodies that are falling out of it instead of fruit. And I think we're on for a wild ride. Now, if you like what I do, please consider hitting that like button and following. And also, there are memberships available. I've set them pretty low. And those just basically support the plant fund behind me if you would like to contribute towards that. But thank you so much for watching, and because things I think are just going to get even more hectic.